Today, I'm taking a look at an accessory to help set up the machines in your shop. It's the Kreg Precision Router Table Setup Bars. These setup bars from Kreg come in a handy box for storage, and there are included 7 different bars, and they range from 1/8 of an inch all the way to 1/2 an inch. Now, you might be familiar with setup blocks, which are nominal sizes, and they're useful for setting distances of your fence or height of your router bit, things like that. These bars are exactly the same, but they have additional features included with each bar. There are 3 parts of the bar that are useful. So let me show you close-up of the bars and what each of the functions of the parts do, and then we'll get into some setup here at the router table and maybe some other machines. The 7 bars are stored in this handy case, and you can see the sizes written right down the side here. Each of these bars is machined from aluminum, so in case you have a problem hitting your blade or bit, it will not damage your tool. Now, there are 3 parts to each of these bars. There's the depth gauge here at the bottom, and that's useful for setting the depth of your blade or bit. There's a fence gauge right here at the end, and that's going to be useful for setting the distance of your fence. And finally, there's the step gauge here at the top, and that's useful for checking some different cuts. You can go ahead and check the depth of that cut. The setup bars are 1/4 inch thick and have these holes drilled in them in case you want to take them out of the box and hang them near your tools. So let's go ahead and set the depth of this bit to make a 5/16 groove or dado. So I've lowered it beneath the depth gauge here, and I'm going to go ahead and raise the bit up slowly, and I'm going to move the depth gauge back and forth until I can just feel it. You can also kind of sight down there and see when you're getting really close, and I just want it to barely touch this depth and kind of just touch the bottom. Looks like it's right about there. Just feel it catching. Dial it in. There it is. Just catching it. Now, if I go a little too far, if I think this is wobbling a little bit, then on this router, I have to drop it back down. I can't do adjustments up and down as well. There's a little bit of play in the adjustment, so I'll drop it back down and then go ahead and just try to dial it back in. Just get it right where I want it. Feel right across. And there it is right there. There we go, just barely touching. Boom. So let's go ahead and make a cut. Check it out. Now, before I make that cut, let's say I want to make this groove 1/2 inch in from the edge of my board. So I can grab the 1/2 inch setup bar, and I'll use the fence gauge here at the end and set up my bit so it's as close to the fence, get my cutting edge there next to the fence, and then just slowly bring out this until it's just touching that cutting edge. If I go too far, it'll easily kick out the block. So then I can just kind of put it back in, get the block nicely along the fence, of course, and then just touching that cutting blade. And then I'll go ahead and lock it down right there. Double check. That's actually a little bit tight. Knock my fence out. Let's check again. And that's good. Actually, I'm gonna get a little tighter. Want to just barely touch but not move my setup block. That's looking pretty good. There we go. That's just touching it there. Lock down my fence and let's run our board. Let's go ahead and check out the results here. Putting the ruler on the depth, I can just make out the tick mark of the 5/16, so that groove is 5/16 deep, and in from the edge, right on the 1/2. So with just a couple of setup bars, you can see how fast and easily I can set up my router table to make a groove exactly where I want it. Now let me go ahead and show you a quick use for the step gauge on these bars. Let's go ahead and make a rabbet that's 1/4 inch in from the edge of my board. So I'm going to again use the depth gauge first for setting my fence location. So I want to set it up so it's just barely going to touch that cutting edge. Wow, that's pretty good right there. Lock that down. Yep, that looks great. Lock down both halves of both sides of my fence. We'll go ahead and make this cut, and I'll just start a little bit and then check it with the step gauge. After going in just a little bit of my groove, I can double check and make sure that is exactly the depth I'm looking for. This is obviously useful for situations where you're looking at an offset from a reference edge and making a cut. The setup bars are useful at more than just the router table. Ever try to get a particular depth here at the table saw? Boom, go ahead and use the depth gauge, dial it in, there you go, 1/4 inch. How about setting a table saw fence? Get your block with the fence gauge, get it just touching that blade. Boom, dialed in, 3/8. How about at the bandsaw? I don't have to fiddle around with trying to keep rulers and checking the blade. Just slide in the fence gauge, run it up till it's just touching the bandsaw blade, and lock down the fence. These setup bars are pretty darn useful all around the shop. On all of my projects, I'm forever using settings like this, 3/16 or 3/8 of an inch, and so having a setup bar for all these different 1/16 of an inch measurements are really handy. But one of the best features I love about this is the fact that I don't have to think once I've got the setup bar. Do you ever misread your ruler? Oh, I thought it was 3/16, I meant 5/16. Well, once you grab the correct bar, you know what you're using. You just use the bar. You don't have to think about those numbers or the little tick marks on your rulers. So if you're looking for a fast, easy way of setting up the machines in your shop, I would definitely check out these Kreg setup bars.